About 72 hours ago, the talk around Man City's Julian Alvarez was weird to say the least. I mean, you had murmurs about him wanting to leave Man City all of a sudden. Pep said that they had no intention to let Julian Alvarez leave, and Man City would do everything to keep Julian Alvarez. Then he had Alvarez's agent meeting with Man City about playing time. Then he had Alvarez saying that he's just going to keep his options open, but he's looking to return to Man City. But from my eyes, I mean, I just thought it was nothing but talk from both sides, and Alvarez would remain at Man City this summer and go compete for yet another Premier League, their 4th in a row. Yet fast forward 72 hours, we got a here we go from Fabrizio Romano, all but confirming that Atletico Madrid will be signing the 24-year-old Argentinian from Man City in Julian Alvarez for a reported package worth, get this, 95 million euros, add-ons and bonuses included, making it Man City's biggest ever sale and Atletico's 2nd biggest ever purchase after Joao Felix. This was a crazy saga that ended in the blink of an eye. So in today's video, I want to assess this transfer. Will Man City be missing a huge piece in Julian Alvarez? Is Alvarez even the right fit for Atletico? And just what makes Alvarez worth the fee if he is at all? Well, that's what we'll be talking about today. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Back of the Net here. I hope you're all doing well. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. So let's first look at this transfer from Atletico Madrid side. Atletico had to do something this summer. They just had to. Not only to make up the ground on Real Madrid, who just kept buying star after star, not only to make up the ground on Barcelona, who just kept producing star after star, but even to make up the ground on a team that finished above them last season in Girona. After winning the league in the 2021 season, Atleti have finished third, and now 4th. They needed to do something to try close that gap. And boy, have they tried to do something in this window. Atleti have already officially signed an extremely solid striker in Alexander Sørloth. They signed one of Spain's best players in the Euros, in my eyes, in Robin Lenormand. And they have all but announced Conor Gallagher joining Atletico Madrid, who I just made a video about. Go check that out if you haven't already. And they now have the returning players on loan from Joao Felix, Javi Gallan. And they have seen 8 players leave the squad in the summer, including the likes of Alvaro Morata, Memphis Depay, Saul Niguez, Savic, and Hermoso. Atleti have gone all in to turn this team around this summer, and they are now adding Julian Alvarez for a fee of 95 million euros. Now, first things first, as of right now, Atletico are very stacked up front. Samuel Moroden is set to go to Chelsea, so I won't include him in this, but right now Atleti have 6 players that are classified as strikers, and that's not including wingers who can play as a striker. Now, granted, 3 of those strikers won't really ever see meaningful minutes on the pitch for Atleti this season, and will most likely get loaned out or sold, and Atleti are still trying to shop Joao Felix, but right now, adding on Alvarez, there are only so many minutes to go around at the striker position. Yeah, they have a lot of players that play as striker. Now, Atleti do play with a 3-5-2, meaning that they use 2 strikers, of course, so having maybe 3 to 4 good strikers is probably the sweet spot for Atleti, being that players like Angel Correa can also play up front. So there's obviously Griezmann, Sørloth, and now Alvarez that will all be guaranteed be in and around the starting 11 game in and game out. But I also don't think it will be a train smash if Joao Felix is kept in this Atleti team, and if he isn't offloaded this transfer window. Being that Joao Felix still has 5 years left on his deal, which is crazy, I would personally be open to keeping Griezmann, Sørloth, Alvarez, and maybe even Joao Felix while looking to loan and cash out the rest of the strikers. Of course, Felix has a hefty wage, and La Liga are quite strict on wage budgets, but in a perfect world, I would be open to keeping Joao Felix. Going on to Julian Alvarez, Alvarez has been an ever solid player for Man City last season, playing 54 games and getting 19 goals and 13 assists in all competitions. Alvarez being able to play in the 10, being able to play as a false 9, being able to play as a pure 9. He is going to add yet more versatility to this Atleti striking unit, with everyone, including Griezmann, Felix, and now Alvarez, being able to play multiple positions in the striking unit outside of Alexander Sørloth. And just for the record, I think Sørloth is an awesome signing for Atleti, especially after losing out on someone like Dovbyk to Roma. Alvarez is a very good playmaker and passer as a striker, and Alvarez to me is best suited as kind of a false 9, which if he was playing alongside an aggressive and big poacher in someone like Alexander Sørloth, that could be an awesome partnership of Sørloth and Alvarez. Even in games, if Atleti really want to be on the front foot, if they really want to be attacking, they could put Alvarez in the midfield 3, behind Griezmann and Soloth, allowing Alvarez to kind of roam and play as a 10 next to some workhorses like Llorente and Conor Gallagher. Alvarez would be a perfect fit in a system where he gets to play alongside a big, powerful poacher like we saw at Man City in the games where him and Haaland both were on the pitch together. Alvarez is an above-average finisher, he's an above-average dribbler, he's an excellent passer, an excellent playmaker for his position, and his movement is quite good as well. The only downside, and this is a big downside to me, is that although Alvarez is a better player, Alvarez is very similar in terms of playstyle and numbers to someone like Joao Felix. Now, Alvarez is a better playmaker and a better passer than Joao Felix, but statistically their profiles match up very similar. And there are areas to Felix's game where he is maybe better than Alvarez, like in receiving progressive passes. Felix has better defensive numbers. Granted, Alvarez was playing for Man City, so can't really compare the defensive numbers, but Felix also has higher dribbling and take on numbers, and overall, statistically, Felix is just more well-rounded than someone like Julian Alvarez. Now, I'm not saying Felix is as good of a player that Julian Alvarez is. I'm not saying that at all. I prefer Alvarez. I think Alvarez has more quality, but their play style and numbers and stats all line up very, very similarly. And my issue with this is that Joao Felix failed under Simeone. Simeone didn't like Joao Felix at all, whether it be his personality, which I don't think it was. I think it was just his play style. He wasn't necessarily the hardest worker. He's not an elite finisher. He's a decent playmaker at best. That's the only issue I have, is that Joao Felix failed under Simeone, and with Alvarez being such a similar player, there is a worry for me that Julian Alvarez could just become another Joao Felix for Atletico Madrid. But I do think with Alvarez maybe being so talented and so good, he should probably succeed under Simeone. But if you told me in 3 years time that Alvarez failed at Atleti, it wouldn't really surprise me. But then again, if you told me in 3 years time that he succeeded at Atleti, again, it wouldn't really surprise me. On the Man City front, to me, this is a fairly huge loss. Yes, they still have Haaland and De Bruyne and so on, but the spark that Alvarez brought when he was on the bench is going to be very hard to replicate, especially at that position. And when De Bruyne was injured for a large portion of last season, well, Alvarez helped out Man City so much and provided such a good spark. Now, with Man City being under Pep Guardiola, there's also still a huge amount to go in the window. Man City, in my eyes, will be just fine in the long run, but I do think Alvarez is going to need to be replaced if possible. It's a huge profit for Man City after just a year and a half with the player, but it's still quite a big loss for them as well. But again, it is a loss I'm sure that Man City and Pep Guardiola will handle and overcome just fine. So for Atleti, I mean, I like the fit. I don't love the fit, but I like it. Outside of the Felix comparison, which makes me very worried, if used correctly alongside the likes of Soloth, maybe in behind Griezmann sometimes, Alvarez could really prove to be an awesome signing. Now, it is a lot of money to pay for Alvarez, even if he does pan out, and this transfer could very well end up looking like a Joao Felix situation where the talent in the player is very clear for all to see. But if Julian Alvarez struggles a little bit, starts getting benched, well then his confidence may take a hit just like Joao Felix, and he may struggle to get himself back in the Atleti team, and Atleti may have another Joao Felix situation on their hands, which for them would be a problem.